Hey, greetings. In this video, we are still continuing that topic, business correspondences. And in this video, I'm going to concentrate on business letters. When I talk about business letters, you may be wondering what about the other business documents been looking at, the likes of the memo, circular notices. They are also letters. But the difference is there is a difference between a business letter and those letters. So let's go to its definition so that we can come up with the date so that you can actually see the difference between them. So when you look at definition, it is a business letter. A business letter by definition is a letter from one company to another or such organizations and their customers, clients, or other external parties. So the major difference between a business letter and the other letters is that a business letter is from a company to another company or organization, or from a company to an individual, or from an individual to a company. So that is the difference. The other letters are used when the company wants to communicate to a big audience, either to the public or to the workers of the company. But for a business letter, it is to either from an individual to a company, or a company to a company, or from the company to an individual, something of that kind, or to a small audience. So that is the difference between a business letter and the other letters we've been looking at previously. So when we look at these, let's look at the types of business letters. When you look at the types of business letters, you have a number of them. For example, letter of reply, letter of order, letter of acknowledgement, letter of giving instruction, letter of claim, letter of adjustment, letter of application, letter of sales, and then letter of advertisement. Those are the types of letters. But then all those types take on the same format, like that we're going to look at. They take on the same format. So we are going to look at the format, the formal business letter format or writing guide. So it is what we are going to look at now. So when actually, let me tell you that and for this particular document, we are not going to look at an illustration. We shall not have an illustration. But for study purposes, maybe there are students who watch these videos. I'll put the importances, disadvantages, and advantages, and then I'll make up something. Maybe I'll show you the pictures of some business letters that will actually help you give further guidance on how to write this letter. So the guidelines I'm going to give as the format, they will help you to work in hand with those pictures, and then you should be in position to draft one. So when it comes to how to format a letter, you need to pay attention to the format of both the page and the content. So both are essential for creating a professional look that is fundamental, that is the foundation of any proper business letter. So when we look at page format, so when we look at page format, so we have page format and then content format. But page format concentrates on the page setup. Now there are 5 key rules when it comes to page format. So let's go them through so that you can get what I'm actually meaning. So before you begin writing, you have to decide which layout you want to use, and then there are 2 common styles. We have the block and the modified block. So the styles of writing that we have when it comes to letter writing. So the block format has a left aligned address and closing. So what you have to know about the block format is that everything is left aligned. That is it about the block format, everything in your letter. And then the other thing about the modified block, for it, the address and the closing are right aligned, or you write them starting from the horizontal center of your page. You start from the horizontal center of your page. That's where you start. That's where your cursor should be when you're starting to write the address and the closing for a modified block. The pictures will give you a clear illustration of what I'm trying to mean. So while the block format is used more oftenly, but both are acceptable for a formal letter. So then when you look at the other thing apart from that, then there is the alignment. So the alignment, all proper business letters should be left aligned. Any other type of alignment is considered unacceptable in most professional settings. that is exception of the writing styles you've looked at. And then spacing, your letters should be single spaced. In addition, there should be a space between the date and the address and the salutation and each paragraph and then you include 4 breaks between the closing and your printed name. You leave a space of 4 lines that is preserved for your signature. Remember, you have to sign. And then the font, so the font used here is Times New Roman, font size of 12. The other fonts, we looked at them as we are looking at business documents. Our previous audio videos, you can refer to them. There is Arial, Geneva, and many others, and some others that are formal. Yeah. And then when we go to lines, when you're using a letterhead, you should be sure to add an horizontal line underneath the letterhead, like a horizontal line cutting across the page underneath there. It is like underlining, yeah, underneath the headline. And then for the margins, you should keep your margins between 1 to 1.5 inches. Generally speaking, 1 inch 1 inch margins are most widely acceptable for professionals. Yeah, and if you want to be taken seriously, then you should make sure that all your punctuation is used correctly. So that's all about the page setup. So this is you set up this actually before you start typing your letter. When you're using a Word document or a computer, a laptop, you set up your page to those settings. You set up that, and then you start writing. Excuse me. And so then you're going to go to the content format, the format of the content. So one thing you should know that as you're starting to write your business letter, there are types of letters. There is one with a letterhead and one without a letterhead. So for one with the letterhead, note this, that if you write your letter with a letterhead, then you should not include the sender's address. You can't have the sender's address and the letterhead used at once. If you use the letterhead, you don't use the sender's address, because the letterhead stands in for the sender's address, and if you don't use the letterhead, so you use the sender's address. So you should know that. And then so where you don't use the letterhead, that's what you're supposed to do. So in that case, you write your contact information on the top left of the page, just above the date, because after that is the first thing you write: sender's address, then the date, then the receiver's address. So one thing you should know, that now you may not include your name in this section. When you're selecting this style, it simply looks better to sign off with your name at the end of the letter. So we just need to include your address, contact information, and that's all. It would be better that way. But still, you have to remember this always, that there are a number of formats of writing these letters, and in most cases, the name is added. Like I've told you, you may not use it, but you may also use it. So it depends on the writing style of your company, the company you're working with. So you can also consider that. It can also be a guide to help you know which format to actually use, what to include and what not to include. So that will depend on your company's preferences. Yeah, but you may not include the name as you write in the sender's address. You may not include the name, you may just put the contact information and the address, but you may also include it if it is fine with the company you're working with, depending on their writing style. So then after that, after the sender's address, you go to the date. So the date should be the day on which you completed your letter. That is important. And then the other thing is the addressee, sometimes referred to as the inside address or the receiver's address. So you don't need to cram what to include in these sections: your sender's address, and then receiver's address. What you should know is that you put the contact information of the sender and the contact information of the receiver. That's what you should know. No need to bother yourself cramming. So the number one step that you should consider when you're when you're writing the address is that you address the person properly, like Mr., Mrs., and you also make sure you include their title, such as doctor and so on and so forth. And then the other thing is that beneath their name, that's the second step, beneath their name, write their current title. If you are unsure of their title, then do the necessary research to find out. Because most times, even when you're sending someone a letter and you use their first name or their title, then it assures you of the feedback. Then include the name of the company underneath the person's title, and then the other thing, which is the fourth step, is the company's location. That the information of the location information of the company. So that is to do with the sender's the receiver's address, because you're sending to a company, receiver's address. In that case, if you're sending to a company, but even if you're not sending the company, that's how you should arrange it. Those are the steps you can follow. So then the other thing that comes next is the subject. So it is a statement. The subject is just a statement in brief that indicates the matter to which the letter relates. So it attracts the attention of the receiver immediately and helps them also to know quickly what the letter is about. So after the subject, then you go to the salutation. So the salutation, with the salutation, to determine the salutation you will use, it will depend on the title of the person of the addressee or the party receiving the letter, and then how familiar are you with them, and then the context of the letter. Obviously it will depend. So if you are familiar with the person receiving the letter, then you can use their first name, unless maybe they have requested otherwise. And if the addressee has earned a PhD or such titles, you can use it as well. Meter titles can also be used, and so on and so forth. And then another thing to know that when it comes to salutations, it is always better to be on the side of caution and polite as possible. So you should be polite. And then the other thing we can look at is the body. After the salutation, then you go to the body of the letter. So the body of the letter is located underneath the salutation. After the salutation, you go to the body of the letter, and is the field where you get down to the business and discuss the reason you're reaching out to this person or party. So usually the body includes several strategic paragraphs meant to inform, persuade, and convey gratitude. So in the first paragraph, if you look at paragraphs, like this is just to help you with the flow of your letter, how you can make it flow. So in the first paragraph, you're supposed to get to your point quickly and state it concisely in the first line. You do not need to wait until the second paragraph to tell your audience what your main point is, because most likely they may not get that far, because these are formal letters. People are busy, office people are busy, so someone may not get the time to read all the letters. So you have to make sure that actually immediately they start getting the letter, they know the point you're talking about. Then the other thing, in the second paragraph, you use evidence and persuasive reasoning to justify your main point. Having stated it in the first paragraph, then you continue to use evidence and persuasive reasoning to justify it. If needed, use an extra paragraph to further support your point via empirical evidence. So implying if the second paragraph itself is not enough, you can continue on to the third paragraph. That is justifying your point. And then the other thing, having finished that, then the other paragraph is the closing paragraph. So this paragraph should restate the point of the letter, and most importantly, include a call to action. So a call to action is a passage that compels your reader to do something. So you should ask yourself, what do I want my reader to do right after reading this letter? So you should do that. It is important always, as you're writing your letters, in all letters, that you put a call to action as you close your letter, because it is what pushes the person reading the letter to do something. You can examples of call to action statements. You have like something like, please call me at, then you put your phone, or email me at, put your email address at your earliest convenience, or please get in touch with me at your earliest convenience to schedule a meeting. Oh, please let me know how I may be of assistance during this period. Any way you put it, depending on what your letter is about. If let's say it is an order of inquiry, you can say, please, I would be glad to hear from you as soon as possible. Or you get something like that. So you have always to put that call to action, because it is the one that will attract a feedback or a response to your letter. And then the other thing, as you close your letter, that is your closing, you always close with a positive sign off, such as thank you, sincerely, respectful, yours faithfully, such. So you remember to capitalize the first word of this closing line and leave 4 lines of space between the closing line and then the typed name. This is for your signature. And then don't forget the designation, that is your title. Let's say Kato Jeremiah, then signature, then manager, CIC, something like that. And then the other thing is the enclosure. An enclosure note is often neglected, is an often neglected aspect of letter writing in digital era. But in fact, not many people actually know what enclosure means. But you should know that when you're writing an enclosure in any letter, you're just implying that there is another document attached, or there is another document attached to this file. For example, you may write a letter and then you have a check attached. Maybe you have anything attached. So for you to inform the person that I've actually attached something, you do it with an enclosure note. So you just write enclosure, double dots, then you include what have you attached. Let's say check or list of names, something like that. So then you should know that knowing how to write a business letter will serve you well throughout your career. So keep practicing and studying it, and you'll be able to communicate in a classic style. So always make it an effort to know these documents, because they make you different in certain way or the other. Yeah, being that you can do it and you're good at writing it, it is an added advantage. Yeah, thank you. Just like I've said, I'm going to take you through some pictures and just as to give you more guidance. Yeah, thank you. So as I said, to show you some pictures. So this picture shows the block format. So this thing in this green box is what we call the address. So that is the address. So you see that this address contains the name Alexander Kane. So like I told you, for some formats, for some you may use the name, you may not use it, depending. So you put some things in consideration. Then this is the closing, since they sincerely or yours faithfully, then your signature, and then your name and a designation. So that is the closing. So for the block format, those things are left aligned, and so is everything in the letter. So that is about the block format. And then for the modified block, you see that for the modified block, the address is on the right hand side. You either start from the horizontal center or you right align it. So something like that. You see even the closing, so that is the only difference between the block format and the modified format. Everything for the block format is left aligned, and everything for the modified block is left aligned except the address and the closing. You get something like that. Actually, it is kind of the former way we used to write letters previously in our secondary schools, whereby the sender's address was left aligned, right aligned, and then the others left aligned, and so was the closing. So that is it about that. Now, so the letterhead is supposed to have such a format. This is the format of letterhead: your name or company name, then address of the company, city, state, phone, email address. So that is the structure, the kind of appearance. That's how the letterhead should be. And then this is where the enclosure note is supposed to be. After sincerely yours, then the name and designation. So then that's when the enclosure comes in. You write enclosure and then you state you put double dots and then you list what you've attached, just like we discussed earlier. So then these are the samples or illustrations. So this is an example. So you see that this person used the letterhead, put the name and everything as I've told you, email address, telephone number, and so on and so forth. And then he continued to the date and then receiver's address. You see, so this one will guide you through. You pause and read through where you need to, and then so it comes to close. So that is the closing. You respectfully name, then signature, and then designation. So that is it. So this person had no enclosure to or anything attached to put in the enclosure. So now this is the other type whereby there is no letterhead. The other first one had a letterhead. This one has no letterhead. So for one without a letterhead, you start with the receiver's address. So for this case, the name was not added. He just started with the address, just like I was telling you. Then date, then receiver's address, and then he continued. So something like that. So the few lines I was telling you to leave are for the signature. This is a handwritten signature. So that is the 4-line spacing you leave. And then if you see for this person, you have the enclosure. So that's why you put enclosures, then 3 samples of print advertisements. So something like that. So that is it. I remember I also promised to take you through the advantages and importances. These are the importances for those who may have interest. I'm not going to take long just to scroll through, so that if you have interest in them, you'll go through pausing as you read. I'm just making them part of the video, so you just have to pause through. Then disadvantages. So that is it. I think the advantages have also been included somewhere. Yeah, they're the ones that come first before the disadvantages. So thank you for watching. Share this with friends who may need it, like if it has been useful, and then subscribe for more. See you.